Yarr, so hot today, both my eyeballs are even sweating.
How's it, chaps? In today's video, I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. The top 10 tips and tricks when it comes to your camping setup. That is in today's video. However, you're also going to be interested in the previous two videos that I've made. Go check those out. It's about how to set up a tent and also how to fold it and fit it back into its original bag. So, welcome back to Burton Builds Camping. Let's get started. This is a ground sheet, so basically a ground sheet goes between the ground and your tent, and it helps keep the bottom of the tent clean. It also protects the bottom of the tent somewhat, depending on where you're setting up. You're not always setting up on this pristine grass. There might be little stones or pebbles or gravel or I don't know, whatever the case is, but having an additional layer between the ground and the ground sheet definitely helps quite a lot. Your tent is a rather expensive item. It's a long-term investment, and ground sheets are relatively inexpensive compared to a tent. So definitely pack in a ground sheet. We prefer the all-net ground sheets, although you can go with probably any brand of ground sheet. In fact, we actually still use just a piece of shade cloth from old Builder's Warehouse there. It still works perfectly well. Also, an additional item that goes with these ground sheets, now you have to buy this separately, are sort of ground sheet pegs. It's very similar to a normal straight peg, except it's got flat discs on the top. So these are quite nice, hitting them in on the corners of your ground sheet, and basically it provides a nice flat surface to walk on. It's comfortable. If you've ever stepped on the top of a peg with your heel, you'll know what I'm talking about. And of course, to drive these things in, you might also want a peg mallet, something like this. It's got a hook on the top, so you can hook pegs out of the ground. And then it's also got this smashing part here to, of course, hit the pegs into the ground. A lot of people just use a normal rubber mallet. I mean, that also works. And I believe you do get these rubber mallets with a hook on the end. But, this is what we've got, and it works. You guys could use a hammer really if you wanted to. Just don't go using your feet. It never really works out that well. So I also forgot to mention another reason you might want one of these ground sheets is that it's actually really comfortable to sit on, to lounge around on during the day, and to walk on, but maybe most importantly, to have a nice clean area in front of the door of your tent. It really helps a lot to keep the inside of your tent clean, especially not so much on the grass, but if you're on gravel or sandy areas, it really is a nice addition to have. When it comes to setting these things up, you just lay it flat over the ground, peg all four corners, and then you're good to go. Some of the bigger ground sheets have got sort of central points. This one's also got a middle point down there to peg in. But yeah, when it comes to pegging it in, basically just pull it, give it a little bit of stretch. Don't try and stretch it 3 campsites down. And basically then you just peg it into the ground. Just like that, nice flat peg, and you'll be good to go. So for those of you who have camped with a canvas tent, specifically a dome canvas tent before, you'll know that these things come with a spring steel type of frame. The frame legs clip together, you set it up, and then the tent hangs off of that frame. Now, if you don't put these away nicely and neatly, on that last day of camping where everybody loves packing up, then things can get a little bit out of hand sometimes, and it's basically like trying to arm wrestle a 12-legged octopus.
Yeah, man. What millipip packed this thing away? Jeez. Probably me.
And that's kind of how fights start, and just it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So I've come up with a way to stop that from happening. So basically, if you do put them away really well or really nicely using this little tip, then when you take it out of the bag, you can see basically it's opened up into 4 little sections. So each of these sections, there's 3 legs for one of the legs, another 3 legs for another one, other 3 and the other 3. And this is generally what gets tangled up. So what I came up with is using this Velcro, as I said before, and basically it's just a piece of Velcro that's attached to one of the legs. It can be attached to any one of them, it doesn't really matter. So we've got that piece of Velcro, and we just stack all the 3 legs together. Now the 3 legs that go onto sort of this leg, or the 3 sections that make up a single leg. So we stack those together and then nice and tightly wrap the Velcro around, and then we're basically left with that. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. Then we just stack this all together, put it into the bag, and when you take it out again, it doesn't all get tangled up. Then you can separate it nice and easily. Just makes your life a whole lot more easy. Next up is tying your tent poles together. So these canvas dome tents have got these spring steel frames that have sections that just easily push together, just like that. But of course, because they easily push together, they also easily fall apart. And I'm sure those of you who have set these up before know that it can sometimes be a bit challenging when you push them together, you're trying to get everything into place, and then it just kind of carries on falling apart, and it actually gets quite frustrating. So I've come up with a solution using the existing rope that's on the spring steel frame. You're basically going to tie the sections together, and then you can helicopter this thing around as much as you want, and you'll be good to go. So let's have a closer look. So we've got the center of the frame here, this existing piece of rope tying the leg to the center, and of course one of the legs. Each of the sections has got the same setup. So what we're going to do is slide it into the center and take our piece of rope, pull it all the way up, and just before we wrap it, you can see that this sort of end of the rope here has got a mushroomed section on it. So we take our rope, pull it all the way through, wrap it around this bottom loop, bottom hook, and you wrap it around the bottom of the pole, and then we take this mushroom section and we just stick it through underneath all the pieces of rope. You can, if you want to, pull it a little bit tight, but there we go. Now you can see the sections don't come apart, and then once you've done this to all of your sections, you can carry it into place quite easily. You can put the frame up, and it's much less frustrating like this. When it comes to taking it apart, also very simple. Just push it back together. You might just have to pull the ropes, and there we go. You can see the loop has just slipped apart. You can pull your section back apart, and then you can pack everything up. Using bent pegs instead of straight pegs. Now when you buy your tent, generally they all come with these straight wire pegs. So these are still good for the corners of the tent. However, I prefer to use bent pegs along the edges of the tent. I'm going to show you why now. But normally when you sort of stake the side of your tent, you've got this loose tab here that needs to be staked down to the ground, and you can take your straight peg, kind of hit it into the ground. Now these are really long pegs, and our ground is extremely hard here, so I don't know if it's going to go all the way in. See, okay, anyway, but you can already see the peg isn't even all the way in, and it's already pulling quite tight on the tent. It's not great. I don't like that type of setup. So what I prefer, as I said, is the bent pegs. So what we can do is we take our bent peg here, and if we want to loop it or hook it onto our loop, that looped end there, we pull it down to the ground. Don't pull too tight over here, and we can see that we want the peg to enter the ground at this point. So you can unhook it, take the point of your peg, put it there where your finger is, and then just make sure the top of the peg is level with the ground, or mostly level, and then you can stake it into the ground. Now again, our ground is very hard. I don't know if this one is going to go all the way in. In, boy. You getting down to something hard there. Okay, so it's all the way. You can see it's pretty much flat with the ground, or level with the ground. Then you can take your loop, hook it on, and there we go. Your tent is now hooked down. I like these bent pegs because it extends the reach of these little tabs, and also it gives a little bit of leeway. There's a little bit of spring here. So as the tent buffets in the wind, it kind of like springs back and forth, and it doesn't pull too hard on here. However, there is another upgrade which I'll also prefer, and I'll always do, and it's got to do with these rubber bands. We'll get to that now. Oh, zit, eh? You guys back? Can you see me there? Okay. These little grey rubber bands is what I'm going to recommend. Why do we need them? Well, let's have a look here. If we peg our tent down with a bent peg or a straight peg, you can see we've got a solid tether here, we've got a solid peg, and when the tent buffets around in the wind, it pulls really hard on all of these joints, and over time it can possibly tear them, but yeah, we just want to try and limit the damage. So what we do is we get a couple of these little rubber grey band things. They're elasticy, stretchy type things. You can get them generally at any camping or outdoor store. You buy them in packs of 10. Sometimes you can get them in singles. And basically you take it when it's new. I like to just give them a bit of a stretch like that. You'll see they stretch out just a little bit once you've done that. Then we can unhook our tent. Well, preferably put these on first and then drive your peg in. But what I like to do here is take our rubber ring, and then we take the tab, this little tether on the tent, and we stick the tether completely through. So you can see here it's on, and then make the bottom of the ring into a point, and then we stick it here through the metal loop, and then we pull it down. And we can see now our rubber tab is, or our rubber ring should I say, is nicely secured onto the tent. So now what we can do is we can put this peg in once again and just get the correct measurement here. And let's do that right now. Ew. I think I hit this into concrete. Anyway, there we go. So we've got our rubber band, and we can sort of hook our tent peg in. We can see that we need the tent peg to be that far. We need the point to go in over here. So we can just take the band off, and again we'll hit this peg into the ground with it level, with the top of the peg level to the ground. I don't know if you guys can see what's going on here, but just bear with me, you'll get it now. Lekker, man. I hope this thing goes in. There it goes. You might just have to put your imagination goggles on there. Yeah, the ground's a bit hard. Anyway, you would drive this all the way in until this is level and pretty much flush with the ground, and then you hook the rubber band on, and then your tent is secured to the ground. Now, a word of warning, these do break. They are consumables, and the sun gets to them, so keep a couple of spares in your tent or in your tent setup, and don't use this as the only method to secure your tent down. Still use a storm strap if you are in heavy wind conditions, and at the corners of the tent I peg the corner of the tent directly to the ground. I don't use these. So just keep that in mind, but this will end up making your tent and your straps last just a little bit longer. Yeah, man. Yes. Yeah, but it's hot today. So on hot days like this in the campsite, it's always good to have your tent windows open to get a little bit of airflow through there, and then you don't sweat your balls off. So how do we do that? Well, there's two ways. We can take our canvas window here, and we can roll it all the way up to the top, so you get lack of airflow, but then you also get the sun beating down here. I prefer to have them like this, where the canvas is up. It provides a little bit of shade, but we still got airflow. However, the problem with having it like this is that the guy ropes stick out like 17 kilometers either side of the tent, and it's a wonderful tripping hazard. So what I'm going to suggest to you guys is, if you don't have a short pole already, get yourself a couple of short poles, and we're going to set them up. Let's just get rid of these long ropes here. Ground is hard. Pull them out, and basically what we're going to do is remove the rope from our canvas little window here. These just generally, oh, there we go, it's just pulled out already. Pull it out. We can do it on both sides actually. I'll try and do this quickly. And we take our pole. Now these are adjustable poles. They've got an Aussie clamp cam lock thing in the inside, so we can set both of our poles to whatever height you want. And then I like to stick it through the little side tether here. Remember, we've already talked about these little rubber bands. Put it through there, and then hook our window through the spigot on the top, and we can take our rope over here. Now of course this rope ain't got no loop, so basically we can just tie a loop just like that. We'll hook it on and then tie it down. However, what I'm going to do is pull the rope through. This is another tip I'll show you about maybe in another video, so come back for that. But we should be able to take our rope and our tent peg. Again, I went to go fetch shorter pegs because the ground is so hard here, so we can just measure our peg. We kind of want it in over there. Hit it into the ground, hook it on, and we tie it up. And there's one of our poles. So this is much better. Can you see me there? Okay, hello. Much better. The poles are keeping the window nice and open there. Then we've got a triangle down that's created by the rope, pegged down into the ground, and the kids can run free. Nobody's going to trip, and this works really well. when it comes to at night, closing the windows, very easy. Take the guy rope loose and we can just slip it over the top, clip it off, and then we zip the window closed. Brilliant. Ah, I wish I'd thought of this myself. Tying your guy ropes to the tent. Now, I'm going to say don't tie them to the tent. A lot of times what happens is when you buy a tent, the guy rope, let's just get this off the spigot here, the guy rope will come attached to the tent, so it'll be tied through the grommet, and then you kind of just peg it down or stake it down. Sometimes what you can also do, if the grommet is big enough, you can put it on the spigot and then you pull it down. I'm going to say no. Let's actually remove the ropes from the tent or from this grommet here, and clip your grommet onto the spigot. Now this can be anywhere, it doesn't have to be on windows, it can be on any part of the tent. However, take your rope, put a loop on the end of it, just tie an old granny knot here, I don't know what you call that thing, like an overhand knot basically, and then don't just hook it onto the top of the spigot, do this. So we take our loop, put it around the front of the pole, then we loop it back underneath and then over onto the top of the spigot. And you can see what it's created here is a little bit of a straight pull down. So once we've done that, we can hook the, now you guys can't see what's happening down. Can you even see me? I didn't even check. Just hooking it back down to the peg there. But what we've got is our rope is putting pressure or tension here on the tent pole, and it's not pulling on our tent or our canvas. And this loop at the top here is keeping the canvas down, and it's basically not putting any additional pressure on the canvas part of the tent. Now this applies to caravanning as well. I don't know, I'm sure a lot of you guys know this already, but if you don't, it works really well. Yeah, man, but did I mention it's hot today? Setting up a tent under a tree is pretty awesome, but when the birds are shit all over it, it's not so awesome. So how do we clean a tent once it's dirty? Now, also it's very important to make sure your tent is clean before you pack it away and dry. We'll get to that shortly. But how do we do that? Well, grab your mother-in-law's favorite mode of transport, and while the tent is dry, just lightly brush off any dirt that is accumulated on the tent. Don't go and smack her vehicle there into the tent, and that's just for demonstration purposes. Don't do that. Lightly brush over the tent, otherwise you might end up damaging the waterproofing. If there's some stubborn dirt, get yourself a bucket of water with a nice soft rag. No detergents, no soaps, no solvents, nothing like that, just plain old water. Also don't use seawater. And you take your damp rag and kind of just dab the tent. Don't go and flip and put your arm or your elbow into the corner of it. You're not washing the dishes here. Just a very light little rub or dab, and that'll loosen up the dirt. Let that dry before you pack it away. And also, if it is raining when you're packing up your tent, sure, pack it up in the rain, but as soon as you get home and there's a dry day, set it up immediately, let it dry properly, and your tent will look just as good as ours. I mean, this tent is 5 years old and it still looks like it's brand new. So you know on that last day of camping, right, when it's beautiful blue skies, 73 degree science outside, and you and your wife are gazing lovingly into each other's eyes, whispering sweet nothings to each other. And of course the kids are frolicking around, and I don't know what fairy tale that comes out of, that never happens. But when you're packing up, another good tip here is to wash your tent pegs. So as you pull them out the ground, just get one of the kids around, get them a bucket of water, a little bit of a rag here, and then rinse the peg off and hang it over the bucket to dry. And I promise you, by doing this, your pegs are going to last a whole lot longer. Now, if you don't believe me, a couple of months ago, I forgot to wash a couple of pegs. I didn't forget. I'm going to say that I did this on purpose to show you, but they've started rusting pretty badly. Now, this peg came out of dry ground. It wasn't even that wet, and it was put away and it's really started rusting. So if you do this, your stuff is going to last a whole lot longer. And as we all know, camping stuff is quite expensive. So a little bit of effort goes a long way. And lastly, top tip number 1. This is arguably the most important one of them all, and it is be well prepared. If you are well prepared, you're going to have a blast with your friends, you're going to enjoy nature, all of that good stuff. So How do you become well prepared? What are the essentials? What is going to make your camping trip fun and easy? If you guys want to know that, go watch this video right here and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. Cheers.